Chitty, chatting with a pro.
Chatting with a pro. Oh boy, we are at that segment again. Good times, good stuff. I've got a good pro friend of mine here. His name is Tim Jones. He does a little thing called View from the Bleachers.
That's right.
There'll be a link in the description, but oh man, is it funny. And it's periodic, so you can...
What he means is it's periodically funny.
Well, it only comes out periodically.
Once every 6 years.
And then from there, even then is it periodic that the humor exists. Really, it just diminishes.
Yeah.
I mean...
And it's really, when you say periodic, that's because my humor is specifically and only about elements on the periodic table. So it is kind of, it's a niche kind of following I have.
It really is. And I really appreciate that in your kitchen you actually have a periodic table.
Yeah, periodically.
Yeah, the shape is weird. It's kind of hard to get chairs around, but it's, you know.
And it's also radioactive. That's another problem.
Only parts of it. Only parts. I don't think that's bad.
Yeah.
So, Tim, a while back you moved to an island.
Yes.
Now, what is it like having to take a ship to get to work every day?
Yeah. It's difficult, especially because it's a battleship, and my commute, well, it takes about 4 months to get there. No, actually, the good news is, where I live, you can actually drive onto the island. Isn't that amazing? No ferry boats.
Is the lake frozen, or...?
We skate. It's perpetually sub-zero where I live. It's north of the Arctic Circle. There's not a Starbucks for 500 miles, so, you know. But
well,
you make do. You know,
compromise.
That's right. The view of the polar bears this time of year is fantastic.
Yes, they're very lovely when they go into their feeding frenzies.
Yes. Yeah, you want to remind your kids, and this is a parenting tip, when you take your kids out to feed the polar bears, make sure that the kids don't get more than about 12 inches from the polar bear, and especially don't pat the cubs. That's just sound advice.
No, and the neat thing, and this is kind of a zoological tip, is if you want to know if the polar bear is male or female, what you do is you smack it on the nose, like really hard.
Yeah.
And then you will have really no more questions about anything after that.
Yeah, that's true.
That is the final question you will ask.
That is. In fact, speaking of, and this is a survival tip, because in addition to being an expert on parenting, I'm also a survivalist. You do not need, this is contrary to a lot of people who think you have to be able to run faster than a polar bear. That is not true.
Okay.
You just need to go with somebody and be able to run faster than the person you're with.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. I actually have a buddy who was able to survive a polar bear attack with a .22 pistol.
Wow.
Yeah, he just shot his girlfriend.
Yeah, that'll do it. That's parenting advice or survival advice from the experts. Good thinking.
You just gotta work it out.
Yeah.
And so, have you seen the movie The Island, where there's a subterranean dystopian hellscape where people are used for body parts?
I did, but I left after 10 minutes because it reminded me way too much of my own existence and my own life. So
okay, because I was thinking, since you live on an island, I figured
yeah.
it was your Alcatraz.
Yeah, been there. Yeah.
So Tim, you got some questions for me?
I do have a couple, if you don't mind. And
I like a counter interview.
Yeah, well, it's been crossing my mind. There's been a lot of discussion in the news about should we, kick out of the country anybody who's a Muslim or anybody who's a Syrian because of all the concerns about terrorism. My question is, would it be simpler just to kick out Donald Trump?
Boy, he would put up a fight, is the thing.
Yeah.
And the good news is I don't see any human rights organizations standing up to prevent that.
No.
So right there, you're coming out ahead of the game. Yeah. No, I think we should get rid of, the people I think we should get rid of is the ethnies.
The ethnies. Tell us more.
Well, those are the people of any ethnicity. So,
Would make it simpler.
That includes the Syrians, of course.
Yeah.
And the Irish and the Italians and, just ethnic people.
Yeah.
The worst are the rednecks.
Yeah.
Because that is an ethnicity. Just ethnies are the worst.
I think I see no flaw with your plan.
Well, check it out. We get rid of all ethnies.
Yeah.
There will be no violence in America.
Well, speaking of violence, that brings me to a follow-up question. And
I'm
again,
ready.
I appreciate your expertise. What are your thoughts about how to solve our gun violence epidemic in America? And how do you feel about free Kevlar vests for every American?
Well, Well, remember, there's no such thing as free. Someone's paying for it.
That's true.
How do I feel about free Kevlar vests? I would like to first purchase stock in the company and then answer the question. But I won't tell you if I'm going to short it or not. But because this podcast is so influential that when I talk about these things, it just totally moves the market.
I hear you there.
So in terms of gun violence,
not that there is a gun violence problem. I mean, I've just heard rumors that there might be.
It's fun when you go on social media and say anything at all about guns, you are immediately lumped in with a group, whichever group it is. There's so much passion on both sides. And I'll tell you, as much as I agree with the Second Amendment, gun nuts are absolutely bonkers, and they make all gun owners look like crazy people.
Yeah.
So my thought is, there's a lot of regulations on the books that we're not enforcing. That's a great place to start. No one can argue with that, except the NRA, which they do ad nauseum.
I personally, this is my own thought, and again, I'm admitting I'm kind of spitballing here. I think we should allow unfettered access to guns, as many guns, any age, no age barrier. 3 years old, you want a Kalashnikov? I think every American should have the right. It's in our Constitution. What I would ban are bullets.
Well, I wouldn't ban bullets. I'd just make them $10,000 each.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, because then it's, Chris Rock made a joke about it. He said, I'm gonna save up. I'm gonna put it on layaway, and in 2 years, you're gonna be dead. But in terms of airplane safety, let's allow guns.
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, nothing, because one guy tries to hijack, and Grandma's got a 357 in his face.
There you go, right there.
The airport security, man, I have got a real problem with that entire industry. For what we spent on the TSA, we could have built another pyramid at Giza.
And store all that grain. That's
as all biblical scholars will tell you, as biblical scientists will tell you, that is clearly, I mean, why wouldn't you spend 20 years and millions of man hours and basically the collective sum of human labor for a generation, if not to have 3 small rooms in which to put grain?
For the afterlife, no less. Remember, it is for the afterlife. So you know that grain's going to be eaten someday. Probably by rats, but it will be eaten. Yeah.
Yeah. Afterlife grain.
Yeah.
I've never tried afterlife grain. It sounds wholesome.
High in fiber.
Yeah.
And,
really cleanses the soul.
Yeah, and clay. Fair amount of clay. Yeah.
It's a matter of opinion. I mean, different grain elevators for different brain surgeons. And that's what I love, is all I can say about Dr. Ben Carson is he's not a rocket scientist.
No, he's not. But he's a fine man. Admittedly, whacked out of his mind.
On Xanax, I think.
I think. Maybe we should store all the guns in the pyramids. I'm just, again,
that'd be so safe.
Spitballing, but it's all starting to come together.
Well, don't you want to take a gun with you in the afterlife in case you end up in hell?
That's true. What if it turns out in the afterlife, the zombies are in charge?
We were talking about zombie survival the other day with the kids, and I said, well, my plan is simple. It's to get bitten early, and then I'm on the other side, which is going to win anyway.
You always want to be on the winning team. That's the key.
And the nice thing is, the zombies always allow converts.
They do. They are open. They welcome converts.
Right. Unlike the living, who are like, oh no, you got scratched. You got to be put down.
That's right.
It's like, come on.
Living people are so judgmental about people who have blood coming out of their, every pore and stuff like that. Come on. They're just like us, except completely different.
Right.
And they want to kill us.
Well, it's a battle to the death, and then the other death, the second death.
Yeah.
Do you really have to kill the zombies twice? That seems excessive.
It does.
Haven't they died enough today?
Yeah. And where are you going to put them all? I know. The pyramids.
See, they're so utilitarian. They're just useful.
There you go.
I can't believe we have so many great uses for the pyramids. All right. Well, I suppose this has been Chatting with a Pro. I'm not sure what we talked about.
Or why.
Or why. I could check my notes, but it just worked out well.
Yeah.
Tim Jones, thanks for having me drive all this goddamn way up to the North Pole just so we could spend 5 goddamn seconds talking about nothing.
That's 10 minutes of my life I'll never get back, and I want to thank you for it.
and I do want to thank you for it because it was fun, and I enjoyed talking with you, and you're a funny-ass guy. View from the Bleachers, there will be a link in the description, and this time I mean it. And you know I will because I'm going to be sending the segment to Tim, I don't know, soonish, when I feel like it. Got stuff to do, holidays and all that.
You'll get to it by the time the pyramids are finally gone, right?
Oh, you got to admit, it's an enduring structure. Too bad the grain all went away. Damn. Chatting with a pro, Tim Jones.
Thanks.